Hey, what's going on out there, world? You know who it is. It's Zeus Cruz of Olympian Multimedia, and we're giving you another segment of A World with the World. As you can see, we are in our virtual studio today, and I have a special guest. He is an author, a proud author, a very unique author, if I say so myself. His first book is A Forest in His Pocket, which was introduced to the world on March 12th, 2021. And then he just put out a new book not too long ago in September 18th, 2023, which is Songs of Love and Longing. So I want to introduce to you, and please welcome Mr. Ray Cicetti. How you doing today, Ray?
That's pretty good.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks. How you making out, Ray?
Well, so far so good. It's been things are going well. No complaints. No complaints whatsoever. So thank you
That's a
for
beautiful thing.
inviting
Uh,
me. Thanks for having me
yeah.
on. I appreciate it very much, and I like what you're doing. So
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I think we need to start off by giving a quick shout out to Rebecca Bond. She's the one that kind of really set this up. I know you work with her through her publishing company, Blue Jay Press. So we definitely want to give a shout out to Ms. Bond. We appreciate
yeah,
you setting this meeting up for us. It's always great to talk with like-minded people, especially in this environment where we're talking about author to author. We're both published authors. We both love books, have a passion for writing. So I'm excited that we're going to get to talk about it. It's all about you, though, Ray. It's not about me, Ray. It's all about you. So we're
okay,
going to put you on the spotlight and talk about your two books, uh,
sure,
and just pick your brain a little bit.
okay.
So how about we start with something simple regarding when it comes to your writing? How did writing become an aspect of your life? And what
Well,
was needed to develop your passion for writing?
yeah. Well, I always loved poetry, and I I guess for a lot of people, high school poetry could have killed it for me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there was no joy in it. There was no understanding of what the music of poetry is, or the feeling of it, or how it resonated with me. It was all about meter and timing and verse, and it was deadening for me.
Okay.
And kind of moved away from it. A lot of poems that I couldn't relate to. You know, medieval poetry. I mean, okay, beautiful as it was, I couldn't connect to it. I was a young man growing up in Newark, New Jersey. I mean, what do I know about that stuff? So it was no fun and no joy. It was something just to get through.
Right.
But my interest in it kind of resurfaced when I started a practice of actually of Zen meditation.
Okay.
Because there's a wonderful tradition in the Zen Buddhist community, the history of it actually, of the arts. And it includes poetry. It includes what are called tanka poems. It includes haiku. And they were
Mm.
writing about their experience. They were writing about the land. They were writing about
Mm.
things that were more relevant to their lives. And it
Mm.
made me curious. And they also had a wonderful spiritual aspect to it. So
Mm.
it got me interested again in trying to write a little bit and loving to read the Japanese and the Chinese poets. So that's kind of how it started for me. Again.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
draw a lot of inspiration from the Zen meditation, the Buddhism. Like that will be like your main source of inspiration when it comes to your writing.
That's how it started, and I think I'm certainly influenced by that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of opened me up to other more modern poets who were influenced by the Japanese and the Asian authors. People like W.S. Merwin and Gary Snyder and a fellow named Kenneth Rothke and people like that who Robert Haas, who all these people
Mhm.
were interested by the Japanese traditions. And I started to, get curious about it and started wanting to read more about them. So,
That's interesting. So when I read your books, I get even though they're short excerpts,
yeah,
but they feel they feel like a completed story. It's amazing how much detail that you put into your poetry, and it's not even long in stature,
yeah.
but you definitely are engaged in this world visually as you're reading it. So when I when I read your work, I can see somebody who could easily write a novel or some very in-depth story of pretty much of any genre. But what is it about poetry specifically that fascinated you?
Well, I would say that the music of it, I was when I was in my 20s, I was playing rock and roll. I was playing music.
Okay,
I
nice.
was I was in a number of bands back in the 70s, and playing rock and roll at the Jersey Shore and in a
Okay,
lot of clubs. And I love the music and I love the lyrics. So I love the music of poems, and uh, I think that that was kind of the interest that I had, you
okay,
and then you go to people like, because I grew up in the era of Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was a wonderful songwriter, and he's a poet. I mean, Leonard
mm-hmm.
Cohen, poet. People like that. So it started bringing me more and more interest in the way to write, um, and that was it. Made it more fun, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Made it more
I
fun.
think you're making a good point there. I'm a fellow musician slash music producer myself, so there's definitely I explain this to people all the time the correlation between the two, between making music, specifically songwriting, and then doing poetry. It pretty much goes hand in hand. That's why
Yeah,
it was kind of easy for me to kind of transition to doing poetry myself. I
yeah,
started off doing like a lot of short stories from like different genres and whatnot. But once I got into the music, it just made it more easier for me to appreciate poetry because I was not a form of writing that I was really in tune with or liked early on in my life. And
hmm
then over time, I grew appreciation for it. So I like that you brought that up there about the music. Uh, Even when you're reading poetry, different people's poetry, you kind of, I don't know if you can, but I can sense a little bit of like a soundtrack
yeah,
to the words as you're reading them. What
yeah,
do you say?
yes, yes. And that's just kind of the way I got oriented. I growing
Mm-hmm.
up with the great music of the '60s and '70s. I mean, I just gravitated to that. You know, so that was kind of I would say the musicality of a poem and the rhythm of
Mm-hmm.
a poem became of interest to me. You know,
Definitely, and I could definitely vouch for that as well.
yeah, yeah,
Music, words just go hand in hand, especially when it's coming from the heart. Obviously, from an analytical standpoint, logical standpoint, you got to put these words together, put it in a way where it makes sense that the reader can understand. But what a nice focal point just to use music itself, because music, you can tell a story through that as well.
right,
I don't think people tend to overlook that a lot. But the case in point is when you watch a movie. Part of the reason why you like the movie a lot, despite, besides the acting and so forth, is the music behind it, the soundscape. It
that's
kind
right,
of brings all these different emotions out, and it brings really to the forefront what the purpose of that scene is, and really
yeah,
brings home the plot, maybe the climax of the movie. Um, it just gets you more in tune with what you're looking at.
that's right. I
So
think that's right.
So that's a great point that you make, Ray.
You know,
So now I think I want to get to the meat and potatoes of this conversation. Now let's talk about your books.
Okay.
which I want to say off the hand, I was very impressed with your writing. It's a very, like I said in the onset, it's a very unique style of writing. I can't, the reason why I say it's unique, because I've read other people's works, both locally and then those who, have made a name for themselves in the world of poetry. I can't really liken you to anybody, so it seems, that's why I say it's so unique, and you come across people, authors, writers, where it's just like they really niched out their own style of writing, which is really neat. So,
Yeah.
like I mentioned before, your first book is A Forest in His Pocket,
Yeah.
excuse me. Again, it came out March 12th, 2021. Your overarching themes, as far as what I got out of the book, you made a lot of references to astronomy, Buddhism, as we were
Yeah.
just talking about, nature, and the seasons themselves, spring, summer, fall, and winter,
And
um,
family and family, I would add.
and the family as well.
Yeah.
So, are these references or these different cream sets, or these are things that are important to you, or
Well,
just
very much
naturally
so.
fascinated by these things?
Very, very much so. I think that for me, I wanted to try to use the whimsical nature of many of these poems
Okay.
to uh, help people connect to something greater than themselves. So
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I think that all art, number one, is essential. It's not a luxury, and
Mm-hmm.
number two, I think that really, for me, art should open me up and open people up to new ways of looking at themselves, new ways of looking at the world, to see something greater that's going on. So, and I wanted to use kind of whimsical, playful ways in which to kind of call people to that. So that poem, "A Forest in His Pocket," is a wonderful example about trying to have the reader be open in fun and beautiful ways to something greater than
Mm.
than than themselves. And I think that's probably a thread that runs through a lot of the poems.
I think that's a good point you make. That's kind of like what I got out of the books. I noticed it kind of likened me to like when you go on vacation. You know, I hear people's stories when they go on vacation, and it's like, it seems like a nice place where you went at. I'm glad you had fun. But you didn't really mention anything spectacular, in my opinion. Because I feel like when you go on vacation, you should try to do things that you wouldn't normally do on a given basis. You
Yeah.
want to try out new things, maybe foods, look at different locations, maybe just do things in general that you wouldn't have the opportunity to do at home. So I kind of draw that too when I read your book. It's kind of like you're definitely creating these environments which are writing. Is I think people in the normal life will overlook. Like you took very simplistic things and
Yeah.
you created like this dimension, as
Yeah.
it were, as you're going ahead and reading it. An example of this is one of my favorite out of your book. It's entitled Jukebox. So I'm very intrigued that you was able to have this dream where you're a jukebox and then you're all lit up with the colors. Uh, People stop me on the street and want to hear their favorite tunes, sung from long ago. You mentioned like the different songs that would be playing, just like such as Elvis "Love Me Tender," Stardust, and Joni Mitchell's "Case of You," which are very popular songs. And then at the ending of it, when I run into town on summer nights, children gather. They dance and sing in circles around me. Some just want to push my buttons, but I don't mind.
Right.
Like the the imagery there is just spectacular as far as you just describing this in a dream setting. I'm just curious on how you was able to come about this concept.
Oh, well, I'm also a practicing psychotherapist, and I have an office in Morristown, New Jersey,
Okay.
about 15 minutes from where I live. And the way this poem kind of started was I was simply standing on the corner with a double espresso coming out of Starbucks,
Mm,
and there was a fellow walking down the street, and he was singing,
okay.
and I watched him with great delight, actually, just
Mm,
singing, happily singing. He didn't care what people were thinking. He didn't care if people watching him. He was just happily singing a song. And the first phrase that came to me in my own mind was a walking jukebox. Here's a guy
mm,
singing song after song as he's walking down the street towards me. So
mm,
that kind of opened up the idea. And then I had that dream of it in terms of how that would unfold, you know.
mm.
Um, and that was kind of how it started for me and how I put it together. Ordinary life, ordinary experiences of life, and wanting to take the ordinary and make something extraordinary that I think lives within the ordinary.
Wow. I mean, that statement alone should tell everybody, tell all the viewers that you're definitely a writer. Uh, Very well said. Um, I just love the fact that you just took something, like I said, simplistic and just your everyday living, and you was able to expand on that. So I love how you brought that out. Just taking something ordinary and make it extraordinary. I hope this is for your viewers out there, those who are aspiring to become a writer. I hope you're kind of jotting some notes down because Daddy's making a good point here. I think sometimes with writers, they tend to try to hit the home run
Right.
instead of taking something simple and just expanding on that.
That's
You know,
right.
the beauty of writing is just it needs to feel natural. It needs to feel like people can resonate with it. That's why
I
I
would,
always give that advice that as a writer, you should put a piece of your identity into your writing because most people that is going to read your work may not know you personally. So in some way, shape, or form, you should try to work in there your personality so people can get an understanding of who you are, and maybe they'll have an understanding of why you wrote what you wrote. What do you think,
yeah,
man?
that's how I would see it, Zeus. And again, if I circle back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, I think that way of looking at life and poems that come out of my looking at life, they come out of, again, the Zen tradition. In the Zen tradition, um, you find the universal in the particular.
Mm,
So, you know,
mm,
uh,
good point.
uh, so you, if you look deeply at anything, you see something marvelous that's there. So, as you
Mm,
mentioned a moment ago, I always found a problem when I was looking for something, special or something extraordinary out there that wasn't part of my everyday life. And I would start writing a poem about it, but it would come apart because it wasn't real. It wasn't real to me, you know?
mm,
It wasn't real to my experience. And I wanted to write about my experience. That's what I think writers ought to do, write about what you know. And find the beauty in what you know in your everyday life. If you look deeply enough, you'll find it. It's right there. Whether it's a flower or a fellow walking down the street singing a song or
mm,
a bird flying in the sky, things like that.
mm.
There it is. There it is.
Well, let's elaborate a little bit more on what you just said. Another favorite of mine's in your book is entitled How the Universe Began. And you already started off good by putting a little statement from Mr. Spock himself. It's life, Captain, but not as we know it. So if you're a
Right.
Star, if you're,
Yeah, I had great fun. I had great fun with that.
yeah, if you're a Star Trek fan, you should understand that right off rip or resonate with that right off rip. But really, where to start your poem? You're kind of describing how the universe or how life started. It's not. It didn't begin with the Big Bang or random molecules connecting in primordial ooze. But from six Italian men playing ball in the park way closer than eating.
Bocce ball.
What a bocce. That's how you say it?
Bocce.
Bocce.
Bocce ball.
Uh, First of all, let's explain that real quick. Well, what exactly is bocce ball?
Bocce ball. Bocce ball is a kind of an Italian game. It's kind of like it's a little bit like uh, horseshoes. So you
Oh,
have a
okay.
so you have a long, like you would with horseshoes. You have a place where you can throw what's called a pallino. A pallino is a little ball, and you
Okay.
throw the pallino out, and then part of playing bocce is you get these larger balls that you roll down and you try to get as close to the pallino as you can, and you try to knock other people away. So you score points based on how close you get it
Oh,
to the pallino.
okay.
So now again, this comes out of my growing up because being born and raised
Hmm.
in Newark, I lived near Branchbrook Park. Branchbrook Park, in an Italian neighborhood, the North Ward. And as a boy, I would go down and play ball. We played baseball down at the park, and right by the park was like a community center. And in the community center, all of these old Italian guys, stogies in their mouths and old hats,
Hmm.
would gather and they'd drink a little wine and they would have espresso and they'd have bocce ball courts that were there. So you'd watch these guys gather and play bocce, and they stogies in their mouth, they're throwing, talking Italian, throwing the bocce, having some fun, and
Hmm.
that was a part of my experience growing up. So again, this was my leap of imagination to say, well, that's kind of fun to see that these guys are the ones who started the universe. It was just my sense again of whimsy and playful imagination, because that's what it was like for me. That was my experience of. I marveled at these things. It felt so beautiful to me.
That's why I find it fascinating that you was able to create a body of work like this of just showing through your eyes how your world or how your universe started, how you was going about growing up.
Yeah,
I love this analogy that you made here when you said, and all the bocce balls tossed became planets, collided with other planets, and found their places in the universe.
yeah,
Um, just a great way of using metaphors to describe again something simple. So for you guys out there that's aspiring to become a writer, I mean, this is perfection in the making here of just taking something very simple and spinning it off to something else, some type of metaphors, but not making it so complex where the reader can't understand it.
right.
Because you kind of already layered it out beforehand. You already set the scene. Bocce ball playing in the park. You got the guys stood at the edge of the court. They talked about soccer, who lost money at poker, the new deli in town. Just their random conversations that people have on an everyday basis.
That's what they
You
taught
already
me.
created that premise. So by the time you got to that last part where you talk about the balls toss became planets, I just think that was just genius. And it kind of just brings it full circle how you started it. And
No, thank you.
I think it's great. I think this is phenomenal. I like the whole book. Don't think I like the whole book. Like, I like the whole book. But these are the two that kind of stand out to me the most
Yeah,
out of there
thank you.
because you took two things that, especially the jukebox, I would have never thought to make a poem out of a jukebox, you know? But it's something everybody knows. It
Yeah,
plays music. We were just talking about how music correlates with poetry writing. So, I mean, you hit the nail on the coffin with that one.
mhm.
And then this one, uh, how the universe began of just,
Yeah, thank you.
making that simulation or that correlation, excuse me,
Thank you.
with
You
the
know, one of the
universe.
one of the
And,
things that I just did because I've been experimenting with it with a is making a few video poems. And
okay.
I started working with a wonderful, wonderful video artist. Her name is Liz Burton, She's out in Washington, Washington State, I think.
Okay.
And I worked with Liz with three poems. One of them being "How the Universe Began," and she put some beautiful video behind it. And I did three of these. I did "How the Universe Began." I did another one called "A Slice of Moonlight," which is from the second book, and I did one that's in this first book called "Japanese Cherry."
Mm-hmm.
And she put beautiful video to it, beautiful flowing videos to each of these poems that I think enhance them. I just put them on my website, but you made me think of it because of this poem, "How the Universe Began." So I've been playing with trying to enhance the poetry even more by putting some beautiful video behind it.
Yeah, I'm slowly but surely making my way to it. I've definitely been working on a lot of other projects, but that's definitely something in the making. I definitely checked out the one with the Japanese blossom or the cherry blossom. Um, that came out extraordinary. She does
Yeah,
definitely
thank
do
you. Yeah,
good work.
yeah.
And you have a nice voice. You were definitely able to bring the words to life as you were going ahead and reciting your poem along with the visuals and whatnot. It came out really great. Uh,
Thank you.
hopefully, whenever I get around to it, it'll be just as good.
I
You
hope
know.
so.
So Ray, let's move on to your second book.
Okay.
As I mentioned before, it came out actually not too long ago, a little under a year ago, September 18th, 2023.
Yeah.
And it's called Songs of Love and Longing. And for what I took from the book, your overarching theme throughout the book is family and the connections you have with your loved ones.
That's
Would that be
right.
correct?
That's right.
So again, I went ahead and picked two that really struck a chord with me.
Uh-huh.
So let's get into them and pick your brain a little bit on what your mindset was when you went ahead and wrote these.
Okay.
The first one is called "This Meal We Made."
Yes.
So I took it as this is an interaction with your wife
Yeah.
as you're describing a meal that you're putting together. Your wife's name, I believe, is Carolyn, correct?
Carolyn.
Yeah. So shout out to the missus. Shout out to Carolyn. Uh, the main point that I liked out of there is there's a part on here. I'm just going to go ahead and read through it,
Okay.
and then you could give your thoughts on exactly what your mindset was on it. This is the part that I love the most. You wrote, "We tried to care for the empty spaces that lingered in each other's hearts, laugh at our folly, that whether due to love or fear, we still dream of wanting more, though we know all we hold dear will change and disappear." Again, fascinated with the analogy, especially the part about the empty spaces that
Yeah.
lingered in each other's hearts. So, Ray, what was your mindset behind this?
Well, again, kind of keeping to the same theme that yeah, again, growing up in really an Italian family, I was the one who my grandparents decided was going to learn how to cook. So so this was simply grew out of an experience with that my wife and I love to do. We cook together. So I thought it would be a beautiful metaphor about our relationship to talk about the metaphor of cooking a meal together, how we work together, um, about our love and our relationship that comes through the act of making a meal. And of course, the meal is the metaphor for the meal of our life, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and and this meal that she and I have cooked together. Well, in September it'll be for 44 years. So,
Wow,
I mean, I know I look like I'm
that's
only
incredible.
35. I know I look like I'm only 35, but
No, you did great, Ray.
so again, I wanted to use that metaphor of making something together. Of course, it's making the meal,
Mhm.
but more importantly, it's making of our life, right?
Yeah, and I think this may not have been the way you intended it to be when you wrote this. But that first part about we tried to care for the empty spaces that lingered in each other's hearts,
Yeah.
to me, as I read it, this is how I took it. That in my situation, I've been with the missus. Next month will be 7 years we've been together. So, make a long story short, I'm very happy. Is there certain things in life that could be a little bit better? Of course. But for the most part, I'm happy. But I'm not content
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
there's certain things in life that I want for myself. It has nothing to do with her. It has nothing to do with the kids. I'm happy with my home life, my family life. I have good people around me that are supportive, that accept me for who I am unconditionally. But for me personally, there are goals that I place upon myself that I haven't reached yet. So that's where my contentment will fall into. Some people think contentment and happiness are the same, but they're not.
I don't think
So
so either.
they're definitely two different things. But
Yes.
with the Mrs. Lisa, shout out to Lisa, she may not totally understand my ambition as far as like what I'm trying to accomplish out of life. But she understands that I am happy. She makes me happy. We have a great life together between in our relationship and with the kids. But she also knows I want more out of life, personally.
Yeah.
So that's how I looked at them words where it says you tried to care for the empty spaces. Because
That's right.
that's my empty space.
That's
Is
right.
trying to find contentment. Like
Yeah.
I'm jealous of her because she has contentment. I'm
Yeah.
jealous of people in general because they found their form of contentment. And that's what I'm trying to get myself. So
And
the
I
fact that she
think,
was willing to care for that and she's
yeah,
understanding of that, that's
exactly.
why them words resonated with me a lot.
Exactly. Because I think that that's part of what love is.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what real intimacy is to support each other, not even with our struggles and what's empty inside. And we take care of each other with those things. And when you take
Mm-hmm.
care of them, then those things start to heal and grow. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was trying to, say that as well. Um, and that last line, I think, we try to listen each day to what calls us to new ways to love
Mm-hmm.
in this fragile, changing light. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we try to support each other in that. So there's endless growth that you can have in your relationship when that's the attitude that you have towards each other to support each other in their growth. Not that you should be the way I want you to be.
Right.
You should become more of
Plus,
yourself.
plus, I think it's a good point that you made here too with this simple statement of we still dream of wanting more. So
Yeah,
I always find that important in a relationship of not allowing this relationship become stagnant.
that's right.
That there's always things that you can get into. There are more things to explore together. So dreaming of wanting more is it's definitely a unique way of looking at it where like uh some relationships, I'm not trying to judge anybody out there or their relationship or how they go about things, but it's always neat when you get into each other's and share each other's interests. It may
That's right.
not be your cup of tea, so to speak, but obviously it's important for the other person,
Well,
you
and that's
know?
how that's how we grow. I mean,
Yeah,
if as I learn and get curious,
yeah,
curious is a great
hmm
word for me about her life and other my friends' lives. It opens me up to new and different things, and
yeah.
that's beautiful.
That's a really good point. You hit the nail on the coffin with that one as well. The second one that I really enjoyed a lot, it's entitled "It's Odd to Consider." So what I took from it is how you view the world around yourself when it comes to your wife, nature. Uh, you gave you made expressions here regarding the taste of espresso and the smell of the pancakes.
Yeah,
Certain things that people take for granted.
yeah.
If you wake up in the morning, for example, for breakfast, you're just looking like, okay, somebody's making breakfast, a big whoop. But sometimes you take that for granted. The smell of eggs, bacon, whatever it is, the pancakes, the smell of coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker. So definitely that smell of coffee really invigorates me right off the top. But the main point that I got out of that is I'm going to go ahead and read the excerpt. Is you wrote that the world I know can stop just for one moment, as if the fates stepped in to break my stride, where notions of you and me close like a finished book, replaced by a gratitude beyond the conceit of words. Um, that's a mouthful right there, Ray. Uh, I like the part that you put in there about the fates. I'm a big fan of mythology, so that was neat that you was able to incorporate that. And the fact where you say where notions of you and me close like a finished book, that man, that almost went over the top on me, over my head a little bit. I had to reread it a few times. Just an interesting way of just looking at it, like close like a finished book.
Yeah.
Read your mindset on this, Ray. How you came about this one?
Well, again, I think that for me, this probably goes back to my own uh, practice in meditation, and again the Buddhist tradition, the Zen Buddhist tradition, where the word notion, the notion that I have of you, is not who you are. The
Mm-hmm.
notion that I have of you is a notion. It's an idea. It's closed. It's a closed. There's nothing open about it. If I hold on to some particular idea of who my wife is, I will miss her. I will lose her. I won't know her because she is ever changing. So the notions that I have are like a closed book. They don't go anywhere. I don't want those notions so much as to stay open to the possibility of everything changing all the time and growing. That the person I knew a week ago is not who she is now, and neither am I. So it's a closed book, those ideas. And that was kind of what I wanted to try to get to, to keep seeing people as fresh and new, filled with possibilities.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point right there. I mean, sometimes, again, it goes back to what I was just mentioning about taking things for granted,
Yeah,
and you could do that with people as well.
yeah,
These are friends, family members that you've been around for years, and you just take for granted that they're just going to be like this type of person or whatever, not knowing that, time changes people.
that's right.
Circumstances change people, and you have to be understanding and adaptable to it.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, I think it goes, Zeus, to the next line actually, because the next line is that it was replaced by a gratitude
Mm-hmm.
beyond the words, that people are not their words. Their people are beyond that. They're more
Mm-hmm.
than what they say. They're more than what I think. There's
Mm-hmm.
again a spaciousness with people, and I don't want to close them off by just what I think about them because then I miss them. So this sense of gratitude beyond the conceit of words is something that was important to me.
Yeah.
You can label me. You can label me as being 74. You can label me as being Italian American. You can label me as being male. You can label me in a lot of ways, but that's not who I
Mhm.
am. Those are words about
Yes.
me, and I'm changing all the time. So it was a way to try to open that up a little bit to seeing that we are more than the way we think about something. You know.
Yeah. And I think also too, this can kind of be interpreted as well about how easily people pass judgment on other
That's right.
people.
Exactly.
So you're
Bingo.
just going by the optics, the visuals, and you're like, man, this guy or woman, I don't think I don't have a good vibe about them. And
Yeah,
they might end up being your best friend.
that's right.
You're a trusted ally, and you didn't take the time to get to know them, talk with them, and look past the judgment call that you made on them. You could be missing out on somebody very beautiful that could be very instrumental in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
I'll give you an example of that in my life, which is about 3 weeks ago, again, I'm standing in a coffee line, and there's a guy in front of me who looks really angry. The long line of people, he looks really angry. And here I am behind him, and I'm really having a lot of judging thoughts about him. Okay,
Mhm.
I've decided he's this, he's that, he's a judge, he's angry, he's grumpy, whatever, blah blah blah. And I'm holding him to these thoughts. I know nothing about this guy. I've just created all these thoughts about him. And when he's the guy standing in front of me, you know what he does? He goes to the barista and says, "This is to the person in front of him." And he says, "I would like to buy this guy a cup of coffee. I'm paying for it." He just pays it
Mhm.
forward. And the guy in front of him doesn't know him. He said, "Oh my God, you don't have to do that." He said, "I want to do that. It's something I do that's just a sense of gratitude." Buys the guy a cup of coffee in front of him and pays for it. So all of my ideas that I created, they just blew apart. I didn't know this guy.
Mhm.
And yet I had all kinds of assumptions about him and judgments about him just by the way he looked.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing. So um, that's kind of what I was getting to about the sense of gratitude beyond the conceit of words or conceit of thinking, you know, as if I know. I don't know.
But it's a good point. I mean, I gravitated toward it because I kind of fall in that realm as well. Um, I've been told a lot too that me personally, it seemed like I'm a very intense person. Just by my mannerisms or just my facial expressions, it just seems like I'm angry at the world all the time. Don't bother that guy. He looks like he's going to bite my head off. And certain people have come back to me once they got over their personal fear or whatever, or intimidation, whatever you want to term it. And they'll come back to me and be like, you know what? You are nothing like I thought you were. You're like a totally different person. Like you're very laid back and you know, you're not this angry ogre type of person. So
Right.
it's not my intentions. I'm just a very serious, I'm very straightforward, very how can you put it like I concentrate at the task at hand. So yeah, I am not guilty of just going around and just having like this smile on my face. It's not because I'm intense or mad or anything. I'm just very focused at what needs to be done, and I'm
Yeah.
always thinking all the time of my
Yeah.
next project, whatever whatever else things that I need to do. So yeah, I mean the fact that we don't mean to pass judgment in our heads, but it just happens to be natural because optics mean a lot, right? You're
Yeah.
looking at something, you're just like, I don't know, you
That's
know.
right.
So once you get over your fear, you can treat it like what you say there, like a close, like a finished book. Just close it. Just
Yeah. That's
leave it
right.
as is. Don't add anything more to it.
Right.
Just leave it as is and just move on.
That's right.
So Ray, again, I'm just trying to give you your flowers as best as I can. I know you've probably been told this more than once, but you're a phenomenal writer. I
Oh,
hope you
thank you.
continue to bless the world with your writing. Please don't stop. Uh, that leads me to my next point to tell the viewers: do you have anything on the horizon? You have anything new coming up?
Um, well, there's this, and I'm gonna probably do another book.
Okay.
I've started, writing some new poems, and I'm working on them. Um, I don't have anything else really special on the horizon. I'm just sitting down, getting down, and continuing to look at the world in new and interesting ways, and
Mm-hmm.
wanting to write about it. Um, the last thing I did, this was what, maybe a few weeks ago. I was in Millville
Mm-hmm.
with the dear Rebecca, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a wonderful get together with some poets and people, and I got a chance to read and share some thoughts and ideas with some other folks. That was very sweet. And at this point, I'm just sitting back and starting to consider another book.
That's awesome. I'm in the same boat too. I've been working on my new book as well. It's a little over half complete, 50% complete. So yeah, It's always as a writer, you come up with ideas and get inspiration from anywhere. That's
Yeah,
why I try to be similar. That's why I resonate a lot with you, Ray, just for the fact of what you were saying about just taking your everyday living and what you see and what you come across in your everyday living, and
yeah,
then you could go ahead and write about it in a
yeah.
metaphoric way.
Zeus, I just I think as a human being as well as a writer, of course, a poet, but I don't want to miss anything. I mean, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to miss the beauty that's right in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's right here. It's right here, right now, you know. So that's where I want to always look. That's where I want to look. Um, and if you can't find it right where you're sitting, you can't find it at all. It's right here.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. I was just talking to somebody a few days ago. Actually, they're thinking about putting together their first manuscript to go about, publishing their first book, and they went ahead and just explained or read some certain passages from their book. And one thing I just told them, just from my point of view, my vantage point, is
Yeah,
to try not to make it overly complicated. You know,
that's right.
it's one thing to make it your own because it's your words, it's your writing, but at the same time, you can get your point across with a short amount of words. You
Well,
know.
I think so. I think so. My own style, I think, is that when I start writing, I write and I go through this process of expansion, 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 expansion. I let everything come. Just let it come. Write, keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. Let it become really, just getting thoughts and ideas down. And then
Right.
over time, as I work with the poem, I edit it. I take stuff out, take stuff out. What am I trying to say? Is it coming across? But I start to compress that poem again to make it more specific and more compact. But so there's a sense of expansion, and then kind of getting down to the specifics of what I wanted to write. But I think for the most part, I'm always looking to write about my everyday life and about you can find the beauty of things, right where you are. I just wrote a poem about it. Is it okay to read that? I just wrote a new poem. Is it okay to
Yeah.
read?
Yeah. I mean, this is
Uh,
exclusive right here, viewers. Right now, with the world.
oh,
Something brand new from Mr. Ray. Let's
okay,
hear it.
okay. It's called "Back in Your Own Backyard" from the song. Many of my friends love to travel. They tell me about all the places they plan to go. Some in search of a new life, others just to get away to see the sights. They send me pictures holding martinis in front of the Eiffel Tower, waving from a California beach, or eating oysters at a famous Spanish bar. I find wonderful discoveries right here at home. Why, just a few days ago, I saw a mother bear and her cubs saunter through our yard, and a red-bellied woodpecker feeding her babies on a Norway spruce. In springtime, flowers in our garden open their red and yellow moments. Every morning there's birdsong in the trees. In summer, top down, I cruise happily around the town. Autumn brings the quick rippling of oaks and maples. In winter, the grand silence of falling snow. Yesterday, at a trailhead, we watched the way light illuminated cathedral pines so that the tips seemed on fire, and just beyond the highway, apple trees blooming. Tonight, I'll cook our favorite pasta dinner, open a bottle of Italian wine, sit back and listen to Bill Evans' quartet, Yusef Lateef's I'm Grateful, or Miles Davis's Sketches of Spain. So again, it's just a way to say that I'm finding the beauty right here, right in your own
Mm.
backyard.
I
So
loved it. I love it. I mean, Roy, you really found your niche, so to speak, when it comes to your writing. I know that looking at videos and interviews of other authors and whatnot, they tend to uh, what's synonymous with what they say is that it took them a while to kind of find their niche, find exactly what style of writing they want to do. And it seems like you got yours right off the bat. And you have a good way with words, really good understanding of just creating these visuals in a very short template and just taking the everyday things that you see, which you come across, and putting them to use. And
It comes from my grandmother. We used to say, "What are you trying to say? Just say it. Just say it."
yeah, yeah. I fall victim of that too sometimes, where like I go ahead and write, and it's like, all right, Zeus. I mean, I'm telling myself this. I don't even really need nobody else to tell me it, but I'm telling myself, like, man, when are you going to get to the point, Zeus? I mean, you're doing a little too much describing, too much of a backdrop to your writing. Let's get to the point. What's your purpose?
Right.
So, definitely for you guys out there, for your viewers out there, I hope you take at least one point from here. I hope you took in all of it. But if you didn't take anything else, take this. Less is more. I know it's
Very good.
oxymoron, but less is definitely more, especially when it comes to writing and developing your writing. Trust me, you can get your message across without putting too many words. You just need to know how the words that you are using, just put it in a way where you can be most effective.
Bingo.
Hit the nail on the coffin. So, Ray, I appreciate you sitting down with me and having this great conversation. Um, Definitely for your viewers out there, I hope you brew some inspiration. Ray, we definitely look forward for your next book to come out.
Thank you.
Drop me a postcard, something to let me know when the book comes out.
Okay.
And then we definitely have to have you back on the show, and we're going to
Happy
be
to do it.
talking about that.
Happy to
So,
do it anytime.
again, what was that again?
I said happy to do it anytime.
Awesome. Awesome. Again, I appreciate you tuning in. Guys, you viewers out there, Ray, again, I appreciate you being on the show. It
Thank you
definitely
for
was a
having me.
treat and an honor. And again, guys, you know who it is. It's Zeus Cruz of Olympian Multimedia presenting you another episode of A Word with the Word. And we're going to be checking you later.
Thank you.